Someone was doing a business and they needed to restock and they wanted some quick money. They went to Tala, they got the money. Someone was in hospital and they needed to clear a bill and they didn't have all the money at hand. They went to Tala, they got the money. Somebody needed to purchase something. They were at the till at the end of shopping and they needed some money just to buy this thing and they didn't have enough money. They went to Tala, they got the money. And they repaid. Okay? And the good thing about it is none of these people will say they've had the experience that many others have had experience with these other so-called mobile lenders. Okay? People have not been called and told, we, unajua City? City amechukua pesa hapa Tala. Ebu mlipie. Ama tu, no.
Ama tumuanike.
Or being put in a WhatsApp group, all of you, and it's called City's loan with Tala.
City's unpaid loan.
City's unpaid loan. No. All the people who have had the benefit of actually benefiting from the 500 billion shillings lent out by Tala over the last million.
500 million.
Over the last 10 years.
Yes.
None can say we had this kind of experience. Right?
No.
And that is why Tala was in the forefront in saying, let us regulate this sector. They worked with others and the central bank to draft the regulations that now brought the mobile lenders under the ambit of the Central Bank of Kenya. They supported the establishment of the office of the Data Protection Commissioner. And in fact, they applied and they are licensed by the Data Protection Commissioner. So your data, if you're on Tala, your data is safe.
It is protected.
Legally protected, right?
Yes.
And all those kind of things. And that's why we say, by the way, just download Tala today on your Google Play. Use it. Even if you don't need it now. The moment you need some money, go to Tala and say, can I get, how much do you need? Okay, because of your the kind of credit history we have on you, we can lend you up to this much. That will keep growing, depending on your credit history and risk profile. Good things happen in this country for those who are seeking them. Yeah, that's the next conversation that we want to have. Are those good things happening? Suba Churchill is a renowned civil society activist. He is the executive director of the Kenya National Civil Society Center. He's our guest for the next hour. Good morning, Suba.
Morning, Latif.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you after a while.
Karibu sana. Kenya's biggest conversation is still here. That the hot seat is still warm.
Yes.
Yeah, karibu.
Yeah, I last sat on it a while ago, but I found it still warm.
Yeah, very good.
Yes.
Yeah, always welcoming.
Thank you.
City will give you the day's proverb, and before he does that, there's a message that City likes to give.
Okay.
And it's about your well-being and how well you know your well-being. City.
Do you want to wait until you have been hospitalized to understand exactly what your health status is? That often comes with the costs that you are probably not prepared for. And these are things you can avoid. Now, most people don't actually believe that they should get a medical checkup, and yet they should. The Aga Khan University Hospital is saying that, look, we have 53 specialty clinics, meaning 53 outlets where you can go to and you can actually talk to a medical expert and you can actually get a medical checkup. It is not much money when you consider it against the value of your health. 9,950 shillings. You will get that checkup and you will get to know exactly what your health status is. If you are a man and you are over 40 years of age, it is even more imperative that you should do so. Because men, as a rule, African men in Kenya have a horrible health-seeking culture. They go to hospital when they're on their deathbed.
They are taken to hospital.
Yes. Do not wait until you are being wheelbarrowed into a hospital. Take yourself there, get checked, no. Once you know what your health status is, then you will know what to do. You will not need to be hospitalized. You will not need to bother yourself with those huge costs that come with hospitalization. And what is more, you will be well.
Kabisa.
Yes.
Kabisa. You agree with that?
I agree entirely. I mean, more recently, I'm one of those who took advantage of the Nairobi City County, customer service week, and just in front of the Hilton Hotel. And went for a checkup. It was not as thorough as perhaps the Aga Khan one would be, But at least I know my sugar level is okay, my blood pressure is okay. You know, some of those basics. The only thing they advised me to work on is my weight, considering my height, the BMI.
Body mass index.
Yeah, so they said, given that
That you cannot.
there is very little prospect of me growing taller. I need to work on my gut. Which I've already started doing.
Now that you have no control of your height, take control of your weight.
Exactly. An advice I took seriously. And so I've started skipping meals. And of course, walking briskly occasionally, as they did advise.
Very good.
Yeah, so I normally do that. But it's still not too late to take advantage of the Aga Khan one.
Do it. 9,950.
It's a little more thorough, and of course, even during the customer service week, you know, they did, you know, go out of their way to even do as, you know, serious scans like cancer and so on, which I found very, very useful.
Very good.
Exactly.
Very good. Siti, this week the proverbs are from the Maghreb.
Yes. Just like the proverbs for last week, the week before that, we are in the Republic of Tunisia.
Okay.
An interesting country. Those who love to study history and are students of history will tell you it is this country that was considered in ancient times known as Carthage. Okay? The Carthaginians, a thriving empire that even rivaled the Romans until the Romans decided to crush them to a pulp and ruled over them for over 800 years. But Muammar Gaddafi, the late, had a different take on this. He claimed Libya was Carthage. And he even named one of his sons Hannibal. Yes, but that is history. That's a tale for another time. Now the proverb. He who is clothed with other people's clothing is naked.
I mean, if you are clothed with other people's clothing, it means you don't have your own. And therefore, if those whose clothing you are clothing, you know, come to claim, you'll be particularly exposed for what you are. And I think that, in my view, could be the meaning of that very, very far-reaching, you know, proverb with far-reaching implications.
Don't be comfortable when you're not in control.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. You know, there's a question, and you've been in the civil service. Question anyway. Let's not even get into that. Suba Churchill, is the country headed in the right direction?
No, this country, right from the days of the presidency of Mwai Kibaki, Kenyans have consistently, and I think the Ambido needs to continue asking that question, because it's the only way you can gauge. You know, when you are on the road and you're driving, and there are certain things on the dashboard that helps you to know, including the direction. You know, today's world is technology driven. And so if you want to find your direction to a place you have never been to, or want to find a shortcut, I think that question becomes very, very important. And in my answer to that question, I would, without a doubt, confirm, as many Kenyans have in those previous polls by Infotrack and other opinion pollsters, that we have been headed in the wrong direction for just too long. And perhaps what we should be asking now, sequent to that, is how far have we gone in the wrong direction? Because we started going in the wrong direction right from, when, Kenya had post-election violence in 2007, 2008, and until now. So we seem to have gone very far. And today I'm seeing some of the headlines telling us that, certain economies that, were dwarfed by Kenya will soon be overtaking the country. And it is not because we do not have the capacity to grow our economy, but because of lack of leadership, visionary leadership that has the potential and capacity to drive the economy forward and therefore lead this country in the right direction in terms of governance, in terms of socio-economic and political developments.
You know, the other question that always comes to mind when I see this one is, does the country know which direction it's heading?
Yes, the country knows. I mean, for them to have said, for many Kenyans over that period of time to have, firmly said we are going in the wrong direction, it means that majority of us, if not all of us, the 2010 Constitution, look at, issues of how to manage the economy, how to run the country, look at our Bill of Rights, which I was privileged as a delegate at the Bomas Constitutional Conference to chair and adopt most of the provisions that you see therein, issues of citizenship and so on and so forth. Kenyans know how to tell when we are not, headed to the true north. And every successive leadership in this country have always charted a path that takes us away from the true north as codified and, and directed under the 2010 Constitution.
Cecil, why do you begin the tale of our apparent misdirection with the Kibaki era? What happened in the Moi and Kenyatta era? I ask this question because every presidency and every successive presidency comes with baggage from the previous presidency.
Yes.
And no one escapes it. Kenyatta came with the baggage of colonial rule. There's no escaping it.
Exactly. Part of the reason I do that is because I've done that is because he has started with the opinion polls. And during that era, I lived part of Kenyatta's era and I remember, having been born in Jericho, I saw what happened, how we quickly relocated to the village because there was no certainty as to what would happen. This is a country that was still young, and then all of a sudden it loses its founding president. And Kenyatta had this larger than life, persona. And so when he died and it was formally announced, the typical reaction by most people, especially in Eastlands, was to relocate everywhere. And I remember the long prayers that my parents said when we arrived safely, and even dedicate part of the prayer to the country, that God may keep the country together. So those days there was no opinion polling, and so it's the reason I used the opinion polls as my baseline, and therefore during Kibaki's era is that is when the country kind of opened up. Even during Moi's era, Moi said he was following the footsteps. And we know how far Kenyatta had already taken us in the wrong direction. So it goes without saying that, Kenya has, right from, when we became a British, protectorate and later colony, headed in the wrong direction in terms of, management of public affairs.
Even as you speak, I was thinking and walking along with it, what we now refer to as opinion polls, there are those who state categorical that it's a scientific way of trying to figure out what it is that people think about certain issues. However, people have always expressed their thoughts. For instance, there were no opinion polls, but how did people decide that they should move out of Nairobi when Kenyatta died?
Exactly.
What informed them?
Had they been asked, they would have given a certain answer.
Yes, they would have. But somehow there was an understanding that Nairobi may not be safe.
Yeah.
How did they arrive at that understanding that Nairobi would not be safe?
I mean, people would assess the situation.
Yes.
It's like this situation room, and you sit and say, look, we have never had this before. The big man has fallen. And of course, at that time, there were countries that had digressed and fallen into the precipice.
Yeah. Yes.
Militaries, takeovers, and so because of that uncertainty, people felt safer in their ancestral land. I said, even if anything happened,
I am around. I'm near my people.
I'm here with my people. They would intern me if in case I go because of any calamity.
Plus, my neighbor is
Exactly.
most likely my close relative.
Exactly.
Yes, it is.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
the likelihood of my brother coming to
Exactly.
kill
Cause me harm.
Exactly.
No.
is less than this guy.
So we went to watch from the village how things unfolded. So all these stories, the burial and so on and so on. We were later told, of course, we later watched it. Of course, that time there were no televisions in the village, but we later on, through documentation and so on, we were able to see how the rest of the ceremony went, and the relatively peaceful transition, despite all the efforts that had been invested in undermining the succession as then laid out in the constitutional framework of that time.
There's a gentleman I went to primary school. He's a very close friend of mine. My bosom buddy in primary school, I had two. This gentleman is called Asgar. Asgar is now a professor of linguistics. Asgar, when we were talking over the phone, and I was asking him about how his life has been in the UK. Remember around the time when Idi Amin came into power and many Ugandans of Asian origin were expelled from the country. He was in Kenya, but many of them had an opportunity to be UK citizens, so they took it up. And at the time of our discussion, I think he was on his third wife. And I asked him...
And still counting.
Yeah, and I asked him, hey, Chief, am I to take it that you're a good Muslim? And he told me, no, there's something called a life path. He told me, my life path has taken me in that direction. And I believe that a country also has a life path.
It does.
And what I'm thinking of as you're speaking is, must a life path be necessarily bad? Because if you look at our colonial heritage, it bequeathed us with certain things that we find abhorrent and we want to move away from, but it also gave us a head start on many other things. It enabled us to be able to fit into the 20th century well, and even move into the 21st century. Now, in between, a lot of the things that have then happened, again, part of our life path, may not be the making of the colonizers, it's our own making. Decisions that we have made, paths that we have chosen. And when the decisions are made, it stops being an individual decision because it affects the entire community of the Kenyan society. So it is, whether we like it or not, it is ours. Take, for instance, our politics and how it has gradually and steadily become a business. So that political parties are actually business entities. So when we try to apply what you call principles of governance and principles to these entities, we often miss the point because a business entity doesn't function along those particular principles that, again, we borrow from the West. That is our life path. That is how we go about our business. When we find that corruption is something we quietly nod into being and acceptance, and we don't oppose it as viciously or as vociferously as we speak about it, then it continues to the point where it's just part of our everyday life. Now, that is our life path. So I was wondering, at what point does this become bad? Because if we really thought it was bad and believed it was bad, just like the death of the first president made people move to the rural areas, would we not have done something similar to create a distance between us and these things that we consider to be bad?
Exactly, and Kenyans have demonstrated that they have that capacity, but have consistently been let down by leaderships. You remember, for example, when Kibaki took over, and when we, Kenyans, decidedly, went to the polls and said, we want a break from this, Kanu rule. There were instances when Kenyans, conducted, citizen arrest of people that they thought were going wayward, to the new, path that Kenyans had chosen for themselves through the polls and so on and so forth. We took repossession of certain facilities that, in in our mind, we were very clear, were public assets,
Yes.
but which had been privatized over time, and it was taken as normal, as facilities like the KICC and so on and so forth. And Kenya said, no, this is public investment, and it must revert to the public. But over time, the leaderships and the goodwill, ebbed, and it was ebbing over issues as mundane as memorandum of understanding. And it goes back to trust. That when people entrust you with the leadership, and when you caucus among yourselves as colleagues who are aspiring together, supposedly on a shared vision, and you agree that this is how it goes back to it comes forward to the shareholding that is now one of the hotly debated issues in this country. But it is normal for people who come together through parties, as you rightly say, that this is how we will contest for power, and if you succeed, this is how we'll there are positions there, and this is how we'll share it. And the disagreements over that, trivial as they may look, led to the ebbing of the public trust. And segments of the population said, look, if you cannot even, follow through what you agreed among yourselves, then how can we trust you?
Yeah.
And with that, the whole country, reverted back to the default mode, the immediate post-colonial mode of, factionalism and ethnicity and so on and so forth. And I think that is what we have consistently witnessed. In come Jubilee, and it is a perpetuation of the same, where ethnocracy, as it is now called, becomes the tool in trade for people who want to sweep into power. And then the latest one is the 2-year-old that, in my view, obtained power by false pretense. And it's a criminal offense under the penal code to obtain anything, including power by false pretense. That pesa mfukoni and all these very nice sounding stories, and then you end up taking even the very little that Kenyans had when they went to the polls, and you come up with all manner of programs that do not add up. And we are saying there's nothing wrong about reforms. If you want to reform the health sector, Ruto is within his right to do so. But you cannot saddle Kenyans with all these multiple reforms and expect that Kenyans will just take them lying down. And so you have seen quite a lot of resistance as late as early this week. The housing levy was still being contested. It's a tax, actually, not a levy, because it's no longer optional. It's compulsory on anybody and everybody. It's juggling with all this, SHA and so on and so forth. The housing, the education model has been put on hold, though I'm told, of course, there is some level of contempt because they seem to be quietly proceeding with the funding model despite the brakes that the courts have since applied. And so we are in a quandary that has been brought and visited upon us by leadership that has failed consistently to learn from, the previous, regimes.
Let's take a break. Suba Churchill is our guest this morning. Suba is the executive director of the Kenya National Civil Society Center. We are talking about our democratic principles as a country. Is Kenya's political landscape safe? Is it in jeopardy? That's a conversation, and that's why we've started. We are asking ourselves, do we actually know whether we're heading in the right direction, in the wrong direction? I still want to come back and ask, do we know what direction we should be heading? People could be saying we're heading in the wrong direction. In my mind, our direction should be heading towards Meru, and we're going towards Kajiado. In your mind, we should be going towards Mombasa, we're heading towards Naivasha. Somebody else, we should be heading towards Naivasha, and we're heading towards Meru. So all of us will say we're heading in the wrong direction. But we were told, now take us to the right direction. We'll take ourselves in different directions. Maybe it starts from there. 28 minutes to 8.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. The weather with Spice FM.
Endelea kufurahia na Star Times. Discover your love language on our amazing channels all month long to enjoy intriguing telenovelas from all over the world daily. Renew your subscription today and endelea kufurahia na Star Times. Watch Filipino melodrama The Fake Life.
We really need to focus on this mission.
Get charmed with our Indian drama Soulmates and Turkish drama Lost in Love. You can also catch fresh episodes of Stepmom on Rainbow TV Plus every day at 8 p.m. Renew your subscription today and endelea kufurahia na Star Times. Buy the DTT decoder for only 1,199 shillings and top up 500 shillings to enjoy unlimited entertainment on the classic bouquet. You can also link your decoder to the Star Times On app to enjoy unlimited entertainment on the go, anytime, anywhere. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
Breast cancer only happens to women. No, it happens to men too.
We wear pink to stand by you.
Breast cancer doesn't just happen to older women.
It can affect any one of us.
Anyone.
Most people diagnosed have no family history.
I am an example.
Let's stop the stigma.
Treatment is tough, but I am tougher.
With support,
We can fight harder.
stand up, speak out, and support.
Funny how the heart can be deceiving.
I can't believe I'm seeing you again.
It's unbelievable how her home has transformed all at 360. Not a single thing I can remember about her space, and yet it's as exemplary and as beautiful as it was before.
It was so hard to maintain the straight line. I'm not a painter, I'm not good with brushes, but this one I tried. I put my all.
Any perfume that you treasure because of what it reminds you of?
Perfume takes you places. It's like a whole cow. So this is like I just got myself a cow at home to get fresh milk.
I like that.
This is
I like that.
it's fresh from the cow. Yeah, it's fresh from the cow. It's fresh milk. So
like that. I love it. I love it. It's like I brought you a cow.
you brought me a cow now.
I like
it's
that.
tiny, but no worry.
Ready to take your farm to the next level? The Farm Kenya Annual Mkulima Expo in Kitale is the place to be. Circle the dates, 24th to 26th of October at Ndura Grounds. This year's game-changing theme, safe harvesting and storage, bigger profits. Get hands-on with cutting-edge tech, unlock the secrets of safe storage, and dive into farm-to-fork innovations. Rub shoulders with top players from seed companies, mechanization pros, storage experts, and more, all under one roof. Farmers, MSMEs, researchers, investors, this event is tailor-made for you. It's your shot to elevate your farm and maximize your gains. For more information, contact Frida on 0723 845 678. Don't just watch from the sidelines, be part of the action at the Farm Kenya Expo, brought to you by Farm Kenya, powering the future of farming, transforming lives.
Even as late as Mashujadi, our president was in Kwale talking about unity and cautioning against, tribalism. Yet, when they get into practice, because what Kenyans are more interested in is not what you say, it is what you do. And in fact, if you look at even the current politics around impeachment, I think the DP's problem was what he said, not what the leadership does. If you looked at the two and you could see it, even the opinions among Kenyans as the impeachment process was on, they felt that, this is a case of the pot calling the kettle black and pointing fingers. Perhaps it's because the pot is slightly bigger than the kettle and therefore can point fingers of accusation. And I've always taken the position that, if you have two thieves who have become a nuisance to the villagers and they start fighting among themselves by the river bank, and one is strong enough to push the other into the river and drowns him, so be it. We are one thief less. We can figure out how to deal with the remaining thief. But that aside, I think when you look at...
You own the monopoly of thief.
We'll figure out how to deal with the surviving one. Once the other one is gone, or drowned by his own fellow thief. But that aside, you see, if Kenyans didn't know what their true north is, they would not be, consistently polling and saying in successive polls that we are headed in the wrong. And they can see for themselves. Of course, there's a sense in which Kenyans themselves are part of the problem. Because when we get an opportunity, and this is a problem even with the civil society ourselves, when you give us as Kenyans an opportunity to elect leadership, we do so on other parameters other than the indicators of the true north. And that's where we always get it wrong. Even to date, as we complain, Kenya is headed in the wrong direction. If any demagogue showed up and said he knows Jesus Christ more than others, ABC and so on, we follow that path. And today we are even seeing the leaderships of our religious sector, casting doubts. Yet, they are part of the problem. Some of the things, the DPs being accused of were uttered in churches, in places of worship, and they cheered him on. Yeah. And then they turn around and say, let's try and reach out to the head of state and make peace. Yet they provided the platform and fodder that, fed into those disputes and conflicts that they are trying to resolve. So there is a deficit of trust. And it starts from our traditional leadership, this council of elders that are all over the place in almost every ethnic nationality in this country, during Czech and so on, everywhere. There is a trust deficit, whether it's traditional, institutional. Look at our National Cohesion and Integration Commission. Uttered not even a single word when some of these statements were being made. When now the impeachment comes, the NCIC tells us that, this process may lead to ethnic animosity. Yet, the utterances that led to that process, passed by as the NCIC watched. And so it is a reflection of institutional, failure, both at, official government levels and even, traditional levels and even, non-governmental level, because we should have raised the alarm when some of these things are going. But I believe, having witnessed how Kenyans occasionally are able to, stamp the authority, exercise their sovereignty, go into the street to demonstrate. Look at the Gen Z movement. When, leadership was not listening, they said we will no longer be talking from the comfort of our sitting rooms, of humble abodes. They took to the streets, and 132 plus of them remain unaccounted for. So when you ask Kenyans whether we are ready, they'll tell you we are not. Kidnappings have become the order of the day. Started by government, national government, then taken to county governments. We have seen how, bloggers are being killed all over the place, in Meru, in Mombasa, and so on, sodomized for exposing and exercising their right to hold leadership to account, social edits. We are seeing the challenges that Morara Kebaso is going through and many others. Of course, young people are bound to make mistakes occasionally, overdoing it and so on and so forth. But that is what learning and leadership is all about. But when leadership, kidnaps even people who have sought refuge, thought Kenya was a safe haven and, relatively peaceful compared to their countries of birth, and then we hood ourselves and hound them out of the country and say, they are going to be safe. They are no longer in control.
We were assured of their safety.
Yes.
How do you, when you could not assure them of their safety?
They had refugee status.
Refugee status. And you hound them out, at a time when, a former MCA has been found murdered, went missing for months, and then found murdered. So Kenya, we can see all the signs. And that is happening at a time when leadership has been tested to its limit and almost uprooted. And they have the audacity still to do, those kind of stuff.
So let's look at the anchor, the Constitution of Kenya, right? The structure of the Constitution of Kenya, if you just look at it, you can see the number one thing that the Constitution of Kenya establishes the sovereignty of the people, right?
Yes.
Then the second thing it does is establishes the supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law. And then the third thing is establishes a republic.
Yes.
And democracy. So you see, number one is that we are the sovereign and that we have our constitution and that we shall be a republic, a democratic, multi-party democratic republic. Okay? So if we say that we are headed in the wrong direction, let's look at Article 1.
Yes.
What role have we played in heading in the wrong direction? What role are we playing in correcting the course? As I keep coming back to say, if we knew the true north, would be heading in the true north. If we knew the true north and we can clearly say that we don't feel like we're heading in the right direction, then why aren't we correcting the course to go in the right direction? Having established that we are the sovereign, we have the supremacy of the law, we are the ones who delegate powers to anybody else, why aren't we then correcting the cause ourselves?
I mean, it's a multiplicity of reasons. I've told you that, all over the world, issues of identity. Look at the politics going on in the United States. Racism is still an issue. Patriarchy is still an issue. There are people who do not believe that, a woman can lead. And we always use the United States as a yardstick for democratic, governance and so on. Yet, they always have those challenges. We witnessed it during Obama's time when, even issues of his birth certificate, people cast doubts. Was he truly born in here? And how come, his mother is not originally American and so on and so forth, and the father and so on. So he was literally dragged in the mud, but he managed to pull through. After him, the Democrats, front a woman, and what do the racists do? They say, they've just subjected us to 8 years of a black man's rule. Now they have brought a woman, and that changed the math. and that is how Trump came in. And I'll not be surprised if such notions are brought into what is supposed to be a civilized society to change the direction in which leadership goes. And so in our case also, we still have these issues of very strong ethnic nationalism. Poverty, leaderships have learned to take advantage of poverty. Our poverty situation, dangled a few coins here and there. And people have fallen into those, low-hanging fruits that they associate with leadership. So those are the ones that have always distorted. But when given a chance, and I think President William Ruto got the shock of his life. Fresh from the United States, garlanded and bedecked with perfumed flowers. The guy comes to the country, and the country is in turmoil, and is being asked to leave. And he could not believe it. So that is how Kenyans, despite all these challenges, the isms that, distort our democracy and our ability to see the true north, we occasionally rediscover it. And when we do, Kenyans have a very decisive way of expressing, their feelings that we are not headed in the right direction. Look at even the impeachment and the kind of feelings it has, brought up in certain regions. There are people who now say, it's just a matter of the deputy differing with his boss. So if we can reconcile, yet the DP, in my view, offended the constitution of the supreme law of the republic. Those utterances of a company that reminded us of the British, East African company that where we came from. Yet, this is the same fella claiming to be a Mau Mau. But his own exploits as a DO, run countenance to some of those utterances that was making.
I hear what you're saying, but let's pause for a second. Earlier on, I had talked about our political parties being business entities. That's what they are. If you look at the reward system that comes with those who are in power, it is clearly a division of spoils. There's no question about it.
Exactly.
Yes. Now, if someone comes up and says, what is the truth? Because this is my position. The Deputy President merely spoke the truth. Unfortunately, it's a sort of truth you're not supposed to speak. We are all supposed to pretend that when everybody or whoever it is in power, they are Kenyan. The outlook is Kenyan. The consideration is Kenyan. And then you do the maths and look at what is happening. You say, wait. It's a strange Kenya, this one. Yeah, I mean, so I take it that if two communities are represented above others in government, so I am represented as a Kenyan, and how many communities do you have in Kenya? 43, isn't it?
Yes.
So I'm simply saying what he said was uncomfortably true, because that is what it actually is. It is a lie to say that when somebody is in power, they will not reward their cronies. They do. That is what happens. The problem comes in when those cronies don't perform as they ought to. Kibaki did the same. Kibaki resurrected people who had long retired.
Exactly.
But they performed. This was the other thing. There are people who had a track record of working in government. They knew what to do, and they did. So one overlooked the age factor and all that because they were doing, and he knew and trusted. Cronism is an integral part. It's just like your intestines are part of your stomach. Cronism is part and parcel of the political process. Unless we're going to say that we've come up with a new process that tells us how else we can div it. In my mind, what was supposed to help cure this to some degree and to avoid amputation was this county system of government that we brought in.
Devolution.
Yes.
But which also lands from the, we used to be told by a mathematics teacher, if you have to copy from your neighbor, copy from the brightest. And so, because your neighbor could have gotten all of it wrong. And that's what you are copying. So our counties are learning from the national government that got it wrong long time ago. But I agree with you, that's the reality. And that's why I started by saying, if there is any sin that the deputy president committed, it was looking for the tallest building in town to proclaim verbally what they are doing privately. And you've said it. Look at the recruitment by the Kenya Revenue Authority. I mean, it turned out that, two predominantly, predominant communities shared out the positions. The positions were nullified supposedly by the courts. Did you see any recruitment?
No.
They moved on and ignored the court nullification of that. And that's what happens. So that even when the DP is in trouble, as he is, and certain staff at that level are dismissed, over 90% of them, again, turn out to be from his backyard. One of the issues the Gen Zs had was, there's so many staff and budgetary allocation to the office of the first lady, the second lady. When were they recruited? What is this budget for? And it turns out that handpicked from the neighborhood. And yet, we have, the Public Service Commission that should be advertising and saying, the first lady wants to do ABCD and is looking for the people with these skills. Now, the qualification is, speaking the language that I speak.
Yes.
And that is where the chronism comes, because people feel that they can only trust those.
If I'm a politician, I derive the power primarily from my backyard. We are a nation where people understand the elected leaders to be good leaders when they provide you with jobs, when they attend harambes. It's who we are.
When they attend every funeral.
Yes. Especially if you come from the part of the world that you and I come from. Okay? It's the simple truth. It's who we are.
That's our reality.
It is our reality.
So the thing is about just balancing that reality.
Regime different is that over and above looking for cronies and rewarding cronies, Kibaki also had a formula. Most of those are people he was with at Makerere. And you see, Makerere then was the citadel of academic excellence. So you would expect, Mudaura, for example, to deliver. You would accept Matere Keriri to deliver, because these are people who knew what
they knew what to do.
They knew what to
do. The problem is
the challenge today.
In those days, the civil society, and Suba, you were very active then, was not looking at it that way. The civil society was actively reminding us about the Mount Kenya Mafia and telling us, look at all these people. Mudaura, Mweraria, Murungaru, they're all Murura, Mura, Mwere.
Mokibaki.
You were being, but that's our reality. And I think what we are saying is it's the balance between that reality and making sure that you are inclusive.
Yes.
Right? Making sure that you're inclusive. And how far are we pushing to ensure inclusivity? Wiper is, the stronghold of Wiper is Ukambani.
Yes.
The lead, when Wiper has positions, so Wiper gets to nominate the leadership of the National Assembly. Well, who do we get? MPs from where? Leadership of the Senate. MPs, senators from where? When ODM is reconstituting itself and it has to have now an acting party leader, where is he from? The new chair of the party, where is she from? The 2 of the 4 experts who've been donated to the government, where are they from? If we look at it that way, then we'll be like, it's a tribal. But then how do we move ourselves from it? Which is what I was saying. We have a true north that we wrote and put in a constitution. But I think that we are the ones, we the people, have not internalized our true north.
Yeah,
and I go back to the constitution and say, constitution, part 1 of our constitution of Kenya, chapter 1, talks about the sovereignty of the people, supremacy of the constitution. And that's why it begins with, the first part is establishing the sovereignty of the people, that we the people are the sovereign. Nobody is above us to come and tell us anything. Number 2, the constitution of Kenya, right, is the supreme law of the land. No other law written elsewhere goes beyond this. And why is that? Because this one we have written all of us together. Any other law could be written by a cabal of people. Number 3, we are a republic. That means we don't have any overlords. We choose our leaders. And by being a republic, this is how we shall elect our leaders. Multipartyism and democracy entrenched in our constitution. That's our true north, right?
Yes.
Now, we don't seem to know that. My argument this morning is, we, the people of Kenya, do not understand our true north. Because if we did this, there's nothing that Kenya Kwanza, Azimio, whoever would come and do.
Eric, let me add to what you've said. We don't want our true north. We prefer this status quo because it enables us to complain. Because that is also...
That's a good, yeah.
Yes,
like that.
Yes, it gives us ample opportunity to pitch and bitch and really say, because part of our conversation in contributing to the national discourse is complaint. People look at what they're doing. You just look at a local level. So and so, just the other day, I was lending so and so shoes. Look at him now. Doesn't even pick my. And look at the person whom they've chosen. That one. I was in class with that fellow. He didn't even finish primary school. No. That is the discourse. And if you look at the social media, listen to many of the conversations. They are at that level. And this is entertainment, is what we like. Now, whether it is a point of escapism for us, because the alternative we long deemed was something that was unattainable, but if indeed we do want to arrive at the true north, which we started off with, there's nothing stopping us really, except of course the government interfering every once in a while, but there's really nothing stopping us.
I agree. I mean, it's going to be a continuous struggle. All this, democracy, they say is not the best. But so far, compared to the others, it is the better option, as Safaricom would tell us. So it is going to be a continuous struggle, and more so for a country. And it has once been opined, and I think it's Winston Churchill, my namesake, who once said that, discussing democracy with people who are hungry, people who have no clothing, basic needs, it's a waste of time. So all these challenges will continue to characterize our continuous struggle as we move towards, rediscovering our true north. But I like it that, rather than, look at these constitutional principles and values as mere ideals and aspirations, that Kenyans increasingly are beginning to walk the talk. And as we continue to realize, and we saw a bit of that in Mount Kenya region, this is a region that has been in power the most of our 60 plus years of independence. But for the first time they said, let's put our trust in somebody who is not one of our own. Of course, that trust is now being undermined, eroded corrosively by the ongoing impeachment, and I'll not be surprised if they go back to the default mode of saying, one of our own, because of these things. And every time, the politics of betrayal, whether it is, Luo Nyanza and many other parts, every community here has a complaint. It's politics of betrayal and so on and so forth. And it happens immediately after every successive election. So, but I want to encourage us that, despite the fact that, at times the wind comes and pushes our boat to a direction we would not wish to be, increasingly we are constantly referring to the ideals that we codified in the Constitution. And I think rather than amend the Constitution to suit the circumstances, let us struggle with these circumstances until we get our true north. And I believe that, over time, in the fullness of time, some of these ideals that we insisted must be in the Constitution will one day become, part of our day-to-day lives and norms that we can, live as our lifestyle.
Do you think the civil society, final question, is playing a role of just sensitizing Kenyans on the true north, on the ideals that we set for ourselves in the Constitution?
Not really. I mean, the civil society, as I've said, I told you that, if you had civil society together and ask them to elect leadership, we make the same mistakes that other Kenyans make. We are a microcosm of the same society that we are part of. And I've seen civil society, kill initiatives just because they are not the ones leading it. And that mentality is there in the civil society. But one of the biggest mistakes we made after we promulgated the new constitution, and the international partners, helped us to make that mistake, was to say that Kenya had crossed the Rubicon.
Yeah.
And so we
no longer need the voices.
We no longer needed the resources. We no longer needed civic education. Counties are supposed to do that. They are not doing it. Most of the funds that are meant for that are the slush funds that they used to do benchmarking and so on and so forth. So we are part of that problem, but also trying to be and struggling to be part of the solution.
Suba, always a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much.
See you again soon. Suba Churchill is the Executive Director of the